This is a piece by a guy named Larry Taunton.
Larry who? Never heard of her.
What sort of a man is he?
Pick from Bama.
A man like any other, but more so.
Well, I thought he was dead.
This is the Larry Alex Taunton Show. Let's light this candle.
Welcome into the Larry Alex Taunton Show. I am Amie Beth Shaver. This is your man in the field. And in the field today, we're talking about something very important. Of course, we're going to talk about the election, but we're also going to talk about something that's near and dear to our hearts. And I don't know if everybody's ready for this discussion. I don't know. But how are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well after some interesting travel, and I think you had a little bit of your own. So, yes. Lay it on me. What's on your mind?
Biscuits.
Biscuits.
All right. I mean, biscuits. Now, look, we are in the American South. I understand that. And there are places that, as you mentioned this morning, serve sad biscuits.
Yes.
But there are places that we think serve delicious biscuits. Yes. And I said, and you did not disagree with me. So I'm very interested in our fabulous audience and our listeners letting us know where their favorite biscuits are. Yeah. This could turn into a tour, you understand, of their favorite biscuits. But there's a place in Birmingham, and I didn't know they did this. Like, I didn't even know, where they slice the biscuits, they drench them in butter.
I'm already in.
You know where this is.
No,
and then
I
they
don't.
grill them. They grill them and then put them on your plate with the most perfect scrambled eggs you've ever had.
Is this Dimitri's?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Dimitri's, and I think Dimitri's just has one location, right?
I think they just have one. I don't know. I'm usually the last person to find out about things.
Dimitri's, for those who are listening, in Birmingham, Alabama, there's a barbecue spot in downtown Homewood called Dimitri's. But Dimitri's, unlike most barbecue places, serves breakfast.
Yes.
And they serve a great breakfast. I'm all in on that. You know, the biscuit, it's interesting to me because the biscuit is really uniquely Southern. And like barbecue, which is uniquely Southern, I would argue, those who are not in the South misuse the words barbecue and biscuit. They'll call a bun barbecue. They'll call they'll call a bun a biscuit, or anything, bready that you would eat in the morning. And they'll call a sloppy Joe barbecue.
Yeah, which is not
barbecue.
That's sloppy Joe. That's from the North.
It's
bless you. I love sloppy Joes, but that's not barbecue.
It's a bless you moment. It is so true. And real biscuits, and I feel like the art is being lost just a little bit. Like when I was growing up, we were talking about this in the break room upstairs, but
it's a very fancy break room.
Yes, a very, very fancy break room. But when I was growing up, a lot of the moms, they made homemade biscuits.
They knew they understood the assignment.
They knew how to make them, and I had this is so funny how you think as a kid, but I'd be thinking I'm spending the night at so and so's house this weekend. His mom, she makes the best biscuits, or she makes the best fried chicken, or whatever, and you that factored into your decision as to where you went. And so you had favorite moms, dads were kind of irrelevant because they were almost never home. And, moms were the caregivers.
That's right.
And they were the ones who, did or didn't let you do anything and this kind of stuff. But the biscuit, I can think of Martha Carter, still she's still out there. One of my mom's dear friends, her son was a very dear friend of mine.
Send biscuits.
She could make biscuits. A woman by the name of Donna Jimenez. Oh, wow. Her biscuits. The best.
I mean, what can you say? I told you, and you didn't laugh at me, because this is the way I judge if people take their biscuit seriously. I said, I think they're going to be served at the wedding supper of the Lamb. Like, I think Jesus, when we get there, he's going to be like,
why not?
First of all, we're going to fall down. We're going to be so excited we're there.
And
then he's going to go, here. Oh, and then my husband talks about his lowlies, so his great-grandmother's ability to make... No, it's grandmother's ability to make these little things. And please, when I say this, you'll know what I'm saying, because it's the American South. Hoe cakes or griddle cakes made with the cornbread and then fried them up nice and thin, slathered. Not just in butter.
I like the word slathered.
Slathered, but they were baked in lard and then slathered with butter. So I, being the newlywed wife, this is many moons ago.
Yeah. He gives you the recipe book and says, you must learn this.
Yeah, you got to learn how to do these. And so one night I thought, oh, he's had a really hard week. I will make his lowlies little things. And he was so sweet. And I was like, it's not it, is it? He was like,
but
no.
have you mastered it now?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
No. Isn't it a funny thing? Because but
I can make good cornbread.
Yeah, I
can make good cornbread.
Requires a
lot of
cast
butter.
Iron,
butter, and love.
Pan.
Yeah.
But yes, it was funny because my grandmother on my dad's side, she's Southern, very Southern, Tallahassee, Alabama.
Oh, my word.
My grandmother could make the best cornbread, pound cake, and fried chops.
Stop.
And my mom mastered them all. My mom is maybe even has outdone her on the pound cake now. But the growing up with that stuff, I know you guys are ready for us to get to something more substantive.
But food, and as you're driving down the road, but let me just say that my grandmother and mother were the queens of the pie.
Okay.
And that was their specialty.
I always got the impression that pie crust was hard.
It is very hard. It is very hard to do. And that was the signature of the ladies in my family was pie and the crust, whether it was banana cream or chocolate.
Are they still living?
My grandparents are not. But my mom and her sisters are. And so at Thanksgiving and Christmas, this is when they throw down with the pie. And so coming into our house.
So they've mastered it.
They've mastered it.
Okay, then I have a request. That banana cream that you just mentioned.
Now, you know what? Banana cream is my fave.
I am putting in an order right now
Done.
For banana cream. I can
attempt.
I have not met her, but I just want to say in advance, I like her very much.
Listen, I'm telling you.
Banana cream is awesome.
Because it was, we were from the north and moved south when I was an infant. And so there are things that we brought with us. And it was the pie. And my grandparents moved south. And so they could throw down. But the joke is around our family is kids would come over and they may not get anything for breakfast because I told you I made sad biscuits and put too much baking powder in them, baking soda, turned them purple.
It is a funny little thing.
It's weird.
That some women who are great cooks
can't make biscuits.
Or there's just a certain something here and there that they can't make.
I can't make it.
And my mom would say that. My mom would say that I don't know anything because I don't cook anything, but I listen to these things because my ears would pick up because these things mattered to me. So my mom would say that biscuits were a bit of an art.
They are an art. I agree 100% with that.
And that they're apparently some of them are more difficult than others. But today, Amie Beth Shaver, very dear to my heart, she brought not one but 2 sacks. This is plural, full of biscuits, which are in our illustrious break room right now. I've already eaten 2. And then, of course, Matt, the producer, brought Krispy Kremes. On top of that, I've already eaten 2. And so, I am sitting here. It's not even Thanksgiving yet. And I'm already full. But this is the stuff that we have to do in order to give ourselves the energy and just a little bit of happiness before we start discussing the very corrupt nature of the American political process these days. It feels like we have become a third world country.
It indeed does. So you put some tweets out that were very good and very spot on. And you talked about just the steal and we're going to have a pause on voting. And I noticed that several people were saying the same things. And it does feel like we've become a third world country. I don't know how in the United States of America in 2022 that we do not know how to count ballots within an evening. Okay.
Can't pull it up. America Has Talent can count millions of votes in a commercial break. But you know what? We can't count these ballots. I guess they don't have enough fingers and toes.
They must not.
In order to do this in Maricopa County, in Arizona. way out there in Arizona.
It feels like it right now, though, don't it?
Out there in Arizona, the inability to count there. You have the same thing that is going on in Colorado. And so that people will know, this will be aired obviously later. And so some of what we say may prove to be inaccurate. We don't know.
We want to be wrong.
We want to be wrong. But so at the time of the recording of this particular episode, it is the day after the November 8 election. And excuse me, the producer is waving at me and telling me it's 2 days later, whatever it is. So we're a couple of days after the fact, and time flies when you're having fun or not much fun at all, or when you're traveling, as was the case with me. But so just bear that in mind as you listen, that we're time stamping this. And so the date today is the 10th. So by the time this airs, this stuff is going to shake out. But as the way it looks at the moment, it looks like we're seeing an effort to prevent Kari Lake from becoming the governor of Arizona. And it feels like we're following the pattern that Democrats have followed since 2020, which is when it looks like we're going to lose, we stop all the counting. We then tell everybody, don't try this at home, everyone. This is very complicated. We still have all kinds of uncounted mail-in ballots. And, it feels to me like Kari Lake should have won this in a landslide, but all of a sudden the counting has become extremely complicated. And, of course, Katie Hobbs, the current, the incumbent governor of Arizona, she also oversees the election process. She refused to recuse herself from that role. And yes, that all looks highly, highly suspicious.
It was astounding. And it seems that it also follows a pattern that when someone who is as brave as Kari Lake is, and they tried this with DeSantis, but they couldn't make it happen because he is so strong.
Yeah.
And he looked them in the face throughout his first 4 years and just stood them down. Like, that's the best you've got.
Yeah.
Kari Lake is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that the pattern is if somebody like Trump is willing to say, that's ridiculous, and stand up to them, then it becomes their personal mission to destroy that person. So stop the voting until we figure out the right percentage so it looks less suspicious, so that maybe it's 4,703 votes that we need to overcome our
That's what
maybe
it feels
our
like.
slight gap. And so you watch it and you think, y'all really think we're a bunch of dumb idiots, don't you?
Yeah.
But I find it very
is,
interesting.
They know they let's go to our commercial break, and we'll save this discussion to the other side. We're also going to talk with, we have with us on the show today an interesting young woman, and we're going to introduce you to her in a little bit about what she has to talk about.
Sounds great. We'll be right back.
This is the Larry Alex Taunton Show.
Welcome back. We are joined by a very special guest today. You might have seen her story play out on social media, but Ariadna Jacob joins us today to really tell us her story, because I think it's also instructive as we deal with attacks in the media, and you're living it out. So would you just start from the beginning and tell us, how did this happen?
Hi, thank you for having me today. I didn't really know much about how the media operates before everything sort of came crashing down in my life. I was born in Mexico City, and I moved to the United States when I was a little girl after my father died. My mom got remarried to an American, and so I sort of got to live in the land of opportunity, which I believe was the United States. And I thought I worked really hard, throughout college, and after I dropped out of college, I was always sort of entrepreneurial minded, and I finally sort of reached what I believed at the time was the height of my career after a lot of failures, as an entrepreneur and as a woman and as someone who bootstrapped my company. I didn't have, it wasn't funded by somebody, and it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of people that helped me get there. And so it was a really happy time. It's sort of that time as an entrepreneur where you're like, I think I made it, whatever it means, I made it. And so, I was pretty much blindsided. I didn't realize how when you're about to make it and there's a lot of potential money that you're going to be making, you have a huge target on your back. And I realized that the industry was cutthroat. I wasn't completely naive about it, but I basically got sidelined at the height of my career by this journalist named Taylor Lorenz, who at the time was working for the New York Times. Now she works for the Washington Post. And she wrote a scathing article full of lies about me, even though my attorney answered, I want to say, dozens of questions before she published the story, trying to sort of exonerate me of any potential, accusations that she was making or that she said others were making about me. She didn't interview anyone else, that was privy to what was happening in my organization. I had a lot of prominent advisors and people that were helping me. So it wasn't like I was just running this organization of representing talent, up and coming social media stars. I wasn't, I was basically Mama Bear. I wasn't, the Wicked Witch of the West, but that's sort of how they painted me. And so after the story was published, I lost my talent clients as well as brands that were working with me. I was doing consulting for influencer marketing at the time. So it was sort of a niche industry that I don't think a lot of people were very versed in. And so I had a little bit of an edge there. I certainly wasn't the only person doing it, but I had sort of been championed by Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, who's a pretty prominent guy in the space. And I was working with L'Oreal and Universal Music Group and big Fortune 500 brands.
Let me just back up just a bit for those who may not be familiar with you or with this particular story. You might have seen Ari on Tucker Carlson. He's had you on to discuss this story and what happened to you. The larger narrative that we want our audience to understand, I try to work hard at least intermittently. I will put out an article or a podcast or something on how media works, because most people do not understand how a television interview works, how a radio interview works, or how articles like this get published, what that research looks like. I mean, just in a simple way, for instance, just to give people an idea, often the article is already written when they call you to get your opinion on the issue at hand. So they could just slip a little line in there that protects them, so they can say, well, we talked to you. But the fact of the matter is, it's after the fact. They've already made up their minds about you. They've already written the story. And this is an abuse of power. It's an extraordinary abuse of power. And this woman, Taylor Lorenz, who has quite a presence on social media, she's a Karen, what we now call a Karen. She herself is always a victim. No matter what happens to her, she's always a victim. And yet she is always self-righteously victimizing other people. So in the case of Ari, when I saw what was happening to this young lady and to her company, and particularly because, as Amie Beth here knows, my son Zachary has an influencer startup company that's quite successful and in the direction that they're going. And I'm thinking, wow, I see the hard work that goes into creating this, and yet how easily something like this can be destroyed. It was just simply a New York Times story. So a couple of questions for you. Why do you think you popped up on her radar? I mean, why would she have targeted you?
Well, she was represented by my competitors at the time, and my competitors are a huge, they're a really big talent agency that represents typically big actors, and they were trying to lead the charge in digital, but they didn't have the talent at the time when I was representing the big TikTok wasn't a big deal when it first came out. People didn't care about it. All the influencers were on YouTube and Instagram, and for the most part, nobody really paid attention to TikTok, but I did, and so I had sort of first mover advantage on the talent that was on there that wasn't getting any help, any guidance, and so I got on there, and then essentially I had a monopoly on TikTok stars, which had signed to my company. And during the pandemic, when there was no touring going on in Hollywood and there was no productions being made, it became extremely lucrative to represent TikTok stars because advertisers were paying, millions of dollars to advertise on social media when they couldn't advertise on television or, in any other sense. So that put a big target on my back. I didn't realize that Taylor was represented by UTA, United Talent Agency, at the time. And she even wrote glowing articles about UTA in the New York Times without disclosing that she represented them. So that's even a bigger abuse of power as I see it. And, it really just goes to show you have to do your homework in terms of who is running these organizations across the board, right? Like I just recently did a YouTube video about, who are the people that are friends with Elon that are involved in Twitter right now. And it's people from these different, venture capital funds and whatnot. But understanding who people are is really important in order to get to the bottom of what is driving an organization ethically, morally, financially, politically, all those things. Whereas when before this happened to me, I was sort of laser focused on my craft. I didn't have time for the politics. I mean, I was bootstrapping this company in the sense that every dollar that came in, I was reinvesting it. The article sort of made it seem like I was grifting off all of these young people that were making millions of dollars. That's not how it worked. These people needed support and guidance before they could make any money at all. They weren't really profitable before until I got in the mix and started helping them and connecting them. So it wasn't that I was stealing grifting off of them. It was a mutually beneficial relationship. And, it was tough to manage that business all on my own at the same time, knowing that this attack was coming. But thank goodness I had good people around me that gave me good advice, because if I would have gotten on the phone with Taylor, I'm sort of a chatty person when I have, I'm not somebody that initially is worried about what I'm going to say, because I believe that I speak the truth. I don't lie or deceive people, so I guess I was naively sort of confident in talking to people typically.
You were saying you're too open with her.
What's that?
I said, are you saying you were a little too chatty and friendly and too open with her?
Well, typically, but thank goodness I didn't get on the phone. I think that's what she was expecting. I think she was expecting for me to get on the phone because she knew of me and we had interacted in the past. She was thinking, oh, if I get her on the phone, she would have been able to twist every single little thing I had said.
Gotcha.
Thankfully, I asked for my attorneys to speak to her. And even before, she was trying to get me on the phone so badly that a talent agent from UTA, who I thought was my friend or who I thought I was friendly with, called me when I was directing Taylor Lorenz to my attorneys, saying, oh, I spoke to Taylor. She really likes you. She just wants to get the other side of the story. I think you should talk to her directly. Why are you sending her to your attorneys? And I just thought to myself, wow, these people are really ruthless. They think I'm stupid. Yeah. And that's when my sort of Latina fire got in, and I was like, oh, I'm not going down this easy.
Have any of the talent come back to you now that you've been able to kind of, put out your side of the story in this?
I've spoken to some of them. There's so much time has passed. Most of them have managers, and the last thing I want to do is what was done to me and try to poach people back after they've already developed their careers. I mean, to be quite honest, I'm attempting to. I have a company that manages talent now. We have a much smaller roster, but the sort of that gold rush that was happening at the time, sort of like the stock market. Like, I can never go back to that time where that particular thing I was doing at the the right place at the right time would happen again the way it was happening. It's a very oversaturated space now. So, I don't think that I could be as successful as I had been, back then. In the same arena. I mean, I think now I'm just focusing on a smaller set of talent that aligns morally and ethically with what I believe. But I'm mainly now consulting with brands and helping them onboard influencers and work with influencers. So yeah.
What advice?
I have talked to people, but and the brands, by the way, the brands were always sort of on my side. Personally, but professionally, they were like, we need to sort of distance ourselves from you. We know you didn't do this stuff, but hey, we're a Fortune 500 company. We can't be associated to XYZ things.
So what advice would you have for people who may find themselves in a similar situation and they're like, wait, what is happening to me? What's happened here? What would you tell them to do?
I would say to try to get ahead of the story. So, if I would try to put it out on my own platforms, I would try to build my own social media platforms and build relationships. If you're running a business, I think it's important that you are aware of the media and sort of try to make some allies in the media. What I didn't realize at the time was that Taylor Lorenz really had a stronghold on this specific industry. This was her beat, she sort of was one of the first people to be reporting on TikTok and that sort of thing in a legacy newspaper. And so because of that, she built a lot of fans that are journalists that now I think it's the Cat 10 barges of the world. They're all Taylor proteges. And so you have to be aware of who is on whose side, right? Like I remember speaking to one journalist from Bloomberg, and it turns out she's repped by UTA. She has a book deal with Simon & Schuster, the same company that Taylor does. And Simon & Schuster has a joint venture with UTA.
Full disclosure, Simon & Schuster is a distributor of my book. So, but anyway.
But and I'm not saying, and listen, I'm not saying the UTA as a whole, they're all bad people. Yeah, and I'm not saying Simon & Schuster is. I'm just saying that, it's just like in the real world, we're all friends with the people that help us out for the most part, right? So it's just be aware of like who has financial partnerships, because I don't think Simon & Schuster necessarily has any ill will towards me, right? I don't think so at all. But if somebody at a company has a financial partnership with someone, they're certainly not going to go out of their way to defend some random person that has nothing to do with anything. So, for example, when I was trying to get my side of the story out, a lot of journalists are represented by United Talent Agency as well. So not to say that they have anything against me personally, but they have no reason to then have me on their show, right?
No, and also, just so people understand how this industry works, when I wrote this book right here, which was favorably reviewed by Book List, the Gospel Coalition, the London Times, the Wall Street Journal, hailed it. Chris Matthews on MSNBC's Hardball called it beautifully written and everyone should buy the book. But then Carol Hitchens began making calls to her friends in media people she knew in media. She had never read the book. It was admitted to me she had never read the book. But she began making calls to her friends in media, and suddenly the BBC is attacking me. The Atlantic is attacking me. The Guardian is attacking me. The Independent is attacking me. In other words, to your point, these are relationships with insiders.
Yes.
You are not a media insider. And they have no vested interest in protecting you. And they want to maintain those relationships with their buddies. And, to use the old expression, they know which side their bread is buttered on. And so, yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and it happens on I think all sides, right? I think once I sort of woke up to how it worked, it was like, okay, you have to make allies. And so, and you have to understand what your allies, what's important to them.
Yeah.
When I realized that Taylor Lorenz was essentially causing problems, lying about and attacking people in the tech space, she went after Mark Andreessen, who his firm A16Z invested in Clubhouse, which was a platform that Taylor Lorenz was basically shunned by. I mean, every time she went on Clubhouse, people would be like, hey, Taylor Lorenz is in the room. Like, don't say anything that you don't want, to be written up in the New York Times. And she felt sort of slighted by them. And so she went on an attack in her articles. And then she went on Twitter and she said that Mark Andreessen said the R slur when people were discussing Wall Street bets on Clubhouse. But Mark Andreessen didn't say anything on the live stream as far as I understood it. And so then people were calling her out on Twitter in the tech space saying, hey, you're lying about this. She also went after Steph Corey, who was then the founder and CEO of Away Luggage. And she was attacking a female founder. And Balaji from A16Z, I think at the time he was a partner. I don't know if he still is. But these are really like highly respected, intelligent tech entrepreneurs that have built things. And Taylor has sort of the hubris to act as though she's somehow holier than thou, smarter than all these people. She's said publicly that she started a company and essentially it didn't work out for her after a year. I mean, most entrepreneurs are working for many, many, many years until something works out. So she has no empathy or understanding for what it is to be a founder. And yet she's going after female founders. And then when a male VC comes back and calls her out for her lies and for her bullying, then all of a sudden it's misogyny. And so it's just so hypocritical. And this type of behavior from Taylor Lorenz has been happening for 3-4, I don't even know how long, many, many years. Even her editor at the New York Times at the time when she was there quit, saying that he wished for death because he was so stressed out. And I'm sure like trying to rein her in. This is, her editor was somebody that worked for Gawker. I mean, these are, anyway, my point is that I think that you have to understand who sort of the people you can trust are in media and who the people are that are just trying to tell their, get some type of sound clip to just throw you under the bus. Even people in the story about me, there was a manager that gave a general quote about how to manage people. And it sounded like he was trashing me. And he texted me after the article came out and he said, hey, I know you're not a bad manager. I don't know why that quote was used in that article. And I just want you to know, I had no idea this is what the story was about. So, I would say watch like the All In podcast. These are the tech entrepreneurs. There's like 4 tech entrepreneurs and they talk about how they deal with the media. And it's almost like they just don't even give them even an interview anymore unless they know it's like friendly fire type of situation, because otherwise you could end up saying something you don't even mean to say that ends up trashing something that you care about or misinterpreting what you're trying to say.
Speaking as a professional writer, Ari, I know that it is easy to take facts and to string them together in a false narrative. In other words, I can take the facts of your life, things that are true. She was born at this time. This is her name. This is where she's from. This is where she's educated. This is the nature of her business. But then put all of that together in order to paint you in the blackest light possible, in order to portray you negatively. And I would say that that's what Taylor Lorenz's skill set is. Her skill set is that she is very, very good at portraying people however she wants to portray them. Why don't you ask, the question we've discussed just a little bit as it relates to this young lady?
Do you also think that, and I don't even know how to say it, I'm just going to say it because I think it's a real thing. I'm a mom. I have 4 kids, 3 girls. 1 was a model. Do you think that part of this is generated and part of her viciousness is generated because you are beautiful and that she could be insecure, perhaps? Do you think that that's part of this?
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I honestly don't know really what's going through Taylor Lorenz's mind sometimes. Like I see the things that she posts and I can't imagine that someone would be so miserable that they just want to hurt other people. I mean,
but
maybe something bad happened to her. What's that?
You've pointed out that she's attacking other women.
Yeah.
What do you think is up with that? What is it that this feels like like Mean Girls?
Yeah, I mean, it sure feels like that. And I think that's sort of what, listen, when all this happened to me, I went to the attorneys and it was like, they felt really bad and they were just like, there's not much you can do. Like, you don't have the money to sue the New York Times. You don't have the money to sue UTA. You don't have, and all this stuff. And I've never been one to take sort of somebody telling me I can't do something very well, but I definitely had to dig deep and be smart about how I moved. So for example, when it first happened, my initial thing was I was hurt by the people that gave her quotes. And your initial reaction is to want to respond back at those people because you're like, how could they say those things? But I'm really glad that I didn't say anything like attacking the influencers, because I'm looking at it now and some of the declarations that are in the lawsuit, the influencers came out and said, listen, we were pressured to say these things and we didn't really understand. You have a journalist at the New York Times calling a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old person and they feel, their whole career is based upon those relationships too. They don't want a New York Times journalist to not like them. And so, one of the influencers that I manage, he wrote a declaration and he said that when he was 17, that Taylor essentially called him and said, have you heard all these negative allegations about your manager, la, la, la. And he said, no, I haven't. And when he didn't give her the information that it seemed like she wanted, she was short with him and then the next day she texted him about something else and said, I'm really disappointed in you, to a 17-year-old kid. That is horrifying. And I don't know if, I don't know if she was sort of jealous of these genuine in relationships that I had with the influencers, the fact that they trusted me, the fact that, they were chanting my name, Ari, they loved me at a certain point in time, not too long before she got involved. And it sort of seemed to me, which hopefully we'll find out in discovery, but every time Taylor got into the mix with people that I knew, all of a sudden their opinions seemed to change about me. And so, the fact that a journalist can do this behind the scenes before she's even publishing the story is really telling. And even after, the article that she wrote, and I was told I couldn't, necessarily do anything about it, I was trying to rebuild my life. And I decided I want to build an app to help support influencer and the influencer economy. And so I was raising capital for that, and I got a friendly interview from a businessofbusiness.com, Christy Smythe. And as she was interviewing me for the story, I think it was before she published or maybe right after she published the story, Taylor Lorenz called her editor, ranting to her boss that I'm a literal abuser that doesn't deserve positive press. So she was trying to essentially hold me underwater, make sure that I was dead, essentially, you know, that my career was dead. And after I found out she did that, it was like time for war, because I realized she was never going to let it go. She didn't want me to speak publicly ever again because she was probably afraid that the truth was going to come out.
Very, very interesting. You know, this part of what's shocking in this is the average person, of course, doesn't know her, and they don't know her methodologies. They don't know your story. They just pick up a paper and they read it. And their inclination is to go, oh, wow, you know, look at what this manager is doing,
right,
and exploiting all of this young talent.
Yeah, especially because you can relate to like Harvey Weinstein's and the sort of the nefarious things that happen on the casting
Colonel
couch.
Parker and Elvis, you know, that movie is out now. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just relating to, or Lou Pearlman, you know, from the Backstreet Boys guy. I mean, there's so many stories of people that took advantage of young talent that it sort of it plays to people's imagination of, okay, I don't understand the social media world, but I understand these stories of other young people that were taken advantage of, so I can sort of relate everything. And I think she did that. And my case isn't political, right? So when Taylor Lorenz doxed libs of TikTok, of course, a lot of people, conservatives and whatnot, you know, people came out in support of libs of TikTok, which they should have done, in my opinion. But when it comes to something sort of that they care about a little less, which is like influencers, and, you know, to be honest with you, I've seen people like in chat rooms when I'm in on the live stream, they say like, you know, your job shouldn't exist, or, you know, they're sort of angry that I was in this position anyway because they hate TikTok or they hate influencers and they think that these people are ruining society. And it's like, well, I hate to break it to you, but these people are going to exist whether I'm here or not. It might be better off if there's somebody that's actually trying to mentor them towards a path of good and inspiring young people in a positive way rather than a negative way. But surely it's not my fault that people are on TikTok, you know?
Yeah, no, we certainly don't hold you accountable for TikTok. There's a lot of wrong in the world, Ari, and we don't hold you accountable for any of it. So this morning we've been talking about the ongoing, you know, counting and some of the corruption in the recent election. I don't think you had any involvement in any of that, but if we did, we'll get you back on the show and be sure to trash you on that occasion. Well, I think a lot of people, they just don't understand that members of media can grind a personal axe they can abuse their position. And the hope is the real professional journalists and reporters that I have had the pleasure of knowing, who generally are of a much older generation because things have changed so much, those are guys who have the ability to say, you know what, I don't necessarily think I like this individual I'm about to interview, or I disagree with this policy or this initiative. However, my job is to be as objective as I can be and as fair as I can be in listening to both sides of this and to present the facts and to keep my own, you know, a personal, you know, beef with a given issue out of it.
Right.
And so what's kind of appalling to me is that an old August newspaper, you know, like the New York Times and the Washington Post, how far they have fallen. And now they've become, I mean, it's funny you say that the editor was with Gawker. I mean, do you know what happened with Gawker? I mean, the Gawker, if I'm not mistaken, they're the ones who are bankrupt, you know, by the lawsuit with
that is one of my favorite books. Like, if anybody hasn't read that book, I think it's called Conspiracy. it's just, it was funded by one of these tech billionaires, the guy,
what's his name?
Peter Thiel.
Peter, yeah, who funded Hulk Hogan in his lawsuit against Gawker.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Because I try to tell like my mom and dad about like what's going on, but my mom's, she's a Mexican lady, like she doesn't understand the ins and outs of this world, but it's one of those things where if a billionaire had a vendetta against Gawker, and it took him maybe, I think it was like 10 years and $10 million to take out Gawker. Imagine if this happens to the regular person, somebody that bootstrapped their company, and that's what happened to me. And so yes, the odds are not in my favor, but that doesn't mean that people shouldn't stand up, because if this can happen to me, it could happen to anybody. And people are paying attention to things that happen in the media when it comes to politics and the pandemic and health and all these things. But it's when it happens in these little niche industries that you realize that the people that are in control, they want to keep their control. And so it's just dangerous. And so I think it's important. I'm glad that the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case happened, because it sort of inspired a lot of sleuths on the internet to find out the facts. Like, remember when they said, oh, the makeup case wasn't even made in that year? And I love that stuff, because
Yes.
it's like, let's get the public involved so that they understand and that they can be vocal when something isn't right. And whether that means that laws need to change, because the New York Times hasn't lost a defamation lawsuit since the 1960s in America. And in the 1960s, if I'm correct, that was when the statute for malice was changed because of the New York Times case. I forget which case it was, but it's a landmark case that changed how regular people can sue the media. And so, but they've used that as a weapon or as a shield to shield themselves from basically lying with impunity. And I think the American people need to study this and understand it and try to make change. And doesn't come easy, but it's a lot of people coming together. Again, I had no money when I went to the attorneys that are representing me now.
Are they doing this?
Really
and you don't have to answer this question if this is in any way asking something that you prefer not to answer. But are they doing this pro bono, or do you have a GoFundMe page?
They're not doing it pro bono, but I do have a Give Send Go. It's givesendgo.com/influences. We still have to pay for the expenses of the lawsuit. So when it moves forward, we're going to want to have expert witnesses. I don't know, all the things that cost money within the firm, but they've made it so that I didn't have to pay hourly, which is it's kind of unheard of, to be quite honest with you. But I believe it's because my case is so good, and also because I think Taylor Lorenz has harmed so many people, but she didn't do it quite as recklessly as maybe she did with me, because she, in my opinion, probably thought that I never would have the money to fight back.
No, they're used to abusing people, and knowing that people really feel kind of helpless and are unable to do anything in response. You said this is called what now? Gifts and Go?
Give, Send, Go.
Gift, send, go.
Oh, no, give. Give.
Give. Got it.
Send, go.
And is this the kind
I think
of thing
actually, if you go to just influences.com, influenceplural.com, it forwards to that page.
Okay.
So that was my old company, influences.com.
Is this the kind of thing people can go to and contribute to your legal expenses?
Okay.
Well, we want to encourage them to do that. We'll put that at the bottom of the page, and we hope you get lots of money from that.
Thank you.
And we hope that you're very successful in your lawsuit against them. This is the kind of thing that I think a lot of people will react to this the way I did. Again, not knowing you personally, but just reading a little bit of your story, I just immediately felt empathy. I felt a desire to support your case and to see you succeed in this, because this kind of thing happens far too much. It's ruinous to people. You've chronicled just here on this particular show the damage that it's done to you, which goes far beyond anything that you've said here. And media has to be held accountable for this kind of stuff, for individuals who, for whatever reason, she decides to target you and she decides to ruin your career. And has since, I mean, it hasn't just been then, has it? I mean, it's just the initial article. There's been more since then, has there not?
You know, I guess this is the thing that maybe people at home listening would relate to, or if they have daughters. It's like, I was in my mid 30s when this was happening. I'm like now, I guess, in my late 30s, and to give up, what I gave up to build my company, I don't think I would have been able to have a family doing everything. I was at some point, I was living with a bunch of content creators in a big house. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I had a husband and kids that I had to take care of. I don't believe I would have been able to do it at the same sort of investment level that I was doing at the time. But when you are an entrepreneur and this is what you live for, I mean, my company was my baby. And so I realize a lot of people lost their businesses during the pandemic, and it's probably very similar. But when you lose it because somebody actively, maliciously went after you, it was gut-wrenching. I woke up in my mid-30s with nothing left. I had nothing. I had no family, I had no kids, and I had no company. Like, everything was gone. So I basically just had, I guess, people are like, well, why did you fight back and all this stuff? I had people that told me, you're smart. Don't focus on this negative. Don't go, don't do a lawsuit. It's going to suck your life out. But it was like, if I don't at least try to get justice and to hold these people accountable, I will regret it for the rest of my life. And, 2 years later, looking back at how much damage Taylor Lorenz has caused other people, I'm so grateful that I sort of took that gut instinct and just tried, because I only had a year to file for defamation. And so I gave myself that year. And I said, if I'm not successful, then, I will fall on my sword and move forward. I certainly didn't feel like I did anything in the article that was warranted for her to write that story. If I had, I would have just come out and apologized. But, I didn't deserve what she wrote about me. So, I think as just what I can give advice to anybody listening is you just really, if you believe in something and you're wronged, especially by the media, there are other people that have been wronged and that will feel empathy towards you. So go to those people and see if they can help you. Because I feel like people like yourself have helped me and given me a platform. So I hope I can do the same for other people. And when my case moves forward and when I'm successful in this lawsuit, I hope that I can be a hope for other people that feel hopeless, because I was in a dark place for a long time. So I just hope it can bring some people hope that whether they've been, smeared by people professionally, just in their workplace, in the office. I think this happens to a lot of people. But maybe there's a playbook for how you can fight back.
Well, that might be your next project right there. We can call up Simon & Schuster and see if they would be interested in a book on that subject. But I say that only partially tongue-in-cheek, because I do think that there's room in the media space for that kind of playbook, because as you've just pointed out, reputation, assaults on reputation are real, and they don't always happen at your level or at my level, that involve media, but they might be the kind of, or Johnny Depp, at the,
right,
at the gargantuan level, but they happen, as you've just pointed out, just in the workplace. And individuals who are smeared, and where the ball gets rolling a particular direction and it feels too hard to pull it back, and where you really don't know what to do. I mean, I can identify with what you've said, where you woke up and you felt like you were in a dark place and you felt like you were, you went through kind of a depression there. What do you do? So I admire you, Ari, for making the decision to fight back. Listen, I have one really difficult question for you, and that is, how old is Taylor Lorenz?
I actually think that we're the same age. She's either 37 or 38.
She hides her age. This is a thing.
Yeah.
This is a thing.
She tries to troll people because they were, she just doesn't like to put any information about herself online, but she's happy to sort of dox and put other people's information out.
She very much controls her own.
Before she doxed Libs of TikTok, she doxed me in the story she wrote about me in the New York Times. But that sort of went unreported because it's like, I don't even know if doxing was a popular thing or a well-known thing.
Explain to people what that is. A lot of people listening won't know what that means. Explain that.
It's basically putting out personal information like your address that's sort of unnecessary for the story into an article. She posted for me. She wrote a story about the content houses that I was managing, and she had actually asked me for the addresses before she published the story. Not for the story that she posted, the smear story, a different story. So she had asked me for the addresses of these houses for a different story. And I asked her, my team asked her, why do you need the addresses? And she said, well, it's just for fact checking. It's not for publication. Well, fast forward to, she writes an article about me, and she includes a Zillow link showing that the house is up for sale with the address of the house where I lived at the time, a single woman. It's like, you put that in the New York Times. Now, you don't think there's creeps that follow me on social media that would love to know my address? I mean, that is just horrifying to me. And the fact that she does it with impunity in the New York Times, the paper of record.
It's amazing that they would permit it, honestly. But of course, I say that the New York Times has fallen. I mean, the New York Times. Not that I ever had a great deal of respect for the New York Times, but at least there was a time where you could expect some level of journalistic integrity, and now they've become Gawker. I mean, this is a money grab. This is where we are now. They are desperate for the dollar. I have to tell a very funny little story here. I get the New York Times for free. And I don't remember why I started getting it for free. Maybe because I wrote, the New York Times has written about me a couple of times. I don't know, but I get it for free. So, but I got so irritated by the New York Times, I tried to unsubscribe. And it took me through window after window. I'm not kidding. It was things like this. First of all, you had to it was difficult to find out where to unsubscribe.
Yeah.
And then it was like, unsubscribe here. Are you sure you want to unsubscribe? Would you just like to receive the Sunday Times? Would you just like, and I kept going and going and going. Yes, I want to unsubscribe. Yes, I want to unsubscribe. I bet I went through 6 to 10 windows. I still get the New York Times. And I've decided that they do this because they want to be able to say that their subscription list is a particular size. Mm-hmm. They wanted me to keep getting it, even though I was no longer paying for it. They don't charge me anymore, but I still get it. And I think it's so they can say, well, our subscriber list is X number of millions of people.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even realize it until recently. I had a hunch, but I didn't realize the article about me was printed in the Sunday paper. Like I thought it was just an article at first. And so when you think about maybe some of the people that spoke badly about me who got, their picture taken for the paper, you don't think that they were excited to go? Because before I had any sort of reason to not to be cautious of Taylor, or actually I was always cautious of her. But before I sort of had any negative feelings of what she was going to attack me, she did a positive story about some of my clients, and I went and bought like 15 printed papers because we were so excited, and we framed them, and that's sort of, I think, my old school, like born in Mexico immigrant mentality of like, we were in the New York Times, we got to put that on the wall. And it's sad that the New York Times has sort of let it, that these legacy newspapers have let things go. But, so sort of to the New York Times' credit, I guess I would say, is that 3 days after I filed the lawsuit against Taylor, Taylor posted on Twitter and said, I'm going on book leave and I'm not going to be tweeting until the end of January. So this was, I think, in August. And then she didn't really start, she wasn't really writing for the New York Times for all those months. And then I think she did 1 or 2 articles, and then she wasn't tweeting at all. Like, I mean, for somebody like Taylor Lorenz, who has like Tourette's tweeting syndrome, it seems like, I was shocked that she didn't tweet for that long.
Nonsense, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, she starts tweeting again to announce that she's gone to the Washington Post. So my mind kind of takes me to like, why did she actually leave the New York Times? Like, did they potentially push her out? Like, you know, hey, lady, we haven't lost a defamation case since the 1960s, and you just got us in hot water. You know, I don't know if the people that were running the Times, you know, I'm assuming that they probably didn't realize the ins and outs of the influencer TikTok industry. And so when Taylor was writing the story, you know, they probably wanted to take her word for it. I don't really know how she could have written some of the things that she wrote that were just so provably untrue. One of the things was that she said that, or they alluded to the fact that I didn't pay the bills at one of the houses. And because of that, the girls had to, the utilities went out and the girls had to flush the toilets with pool water, sort of, insinuating that I left an unsanitary situation in the middle of COVID in April. And so then, you know, my new lawsuit, if you read it, it says there's no way that the bills could have been not paid in April because there was a moratorium on bills in California since March. So how is that even possible? And how did you not at least fact check that? I mean,
well, listen, I'm going to tell you something that you already know, Ari, and that is Friedrich Nietzsche said that which doesn't kill us makes us stronger. That is a lie. That is not true. Some of the things that don't kill us, they just maim us for life. However, you know, if you persevere and you just keep pushing forward, keep your chin up and, you know, keep fighting. We're in your corner. We're pulling for you.
Thank you.
We hope that you're extremely successful, not just in this, but in your other endeavors, because you deserve to be. And it's a really rotten thing that this woman did to you. But we hope that you overcome it and that you succeed.
Thank you. Yeah, I would encourage, you know, anybody that is going through hard times with their reputation or otherwise, like, just know that once you do kind of cross that bridge of getting your confidence back, and that there is light on the others, you know, at the end of the tunnel. I'm actually happy to be able to speak to people like you and to hear about people's stories. You know, it's just the way life is sometimes. Sometimes things come at you that you don't expect, and you got to sort of, maybe that's just the way it was supposed to be. And I do feel this thing has made me stronger. I certainly don't wish it on anybody, but I hope that we're successful, and it takes people hearing the story and speaking out about things like this in order to make change. And so I appreciate you guys having me on and talking about this stuff. And I mean, I do hope to write a book, talking to some literary agents, and so we'll see what happens.
Well, I hope so. Let me give you some advice on that. The most important thing about writing a book, Ari, is write. I cannot tell you the number of people I meet who say to me, in fact, just a couple of days ago, a guy came up to me at a restaurant and said, I hear you're an author. He said, you know, I'm planning to write a book. You don't know how many people I know who are planning to write a book. They never get around to it. This guy looked like he was 80, and I thought, you better get with it. you better get with it. But
I think I'm excited because I always kind of thought maybe I would write a book about everything that happened. But I think what I'm going to do is I was really inspired by this book I read a long time ago. It's called Basic Black by Kathy Black. She was one of the executives that ran Hearst magazines and media companies sort of in that time. I'm a bit like of an updated version. Not to say I run the company as big as Kathy Black did, but her book was sort of these little vignettes about things she learned. And one of the things I loved about that book was one of the chapters was beg for forgiveness before asking permission. And I sort of have used that for like the last 10 years of my life. It was a great book about just little things as you go in your career. So I think that's what my book will be, is little vignettes of just different lessons I've learned throughout my career, being a female entrepreneur and career person.
You are very inspiring. I want to say once again for our audience is give, send, go, and .com /influencers, right? Or they can just
not
go to
influencers. Influences. Like
Influences.
INFLUENCES.
Okay, got it. And I know that Matt will make a note of it and show notes so that everybody can go. I know they're going to be inspired by your story. Thank you for sharing it. It should go far. Everybody should hear what you have to say. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Ari.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Turn out the lights. The party's over. They say that all.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are grateful for the standing ovation, but there will be no encore for today's performance. Please exit the building in an orderly fashion. Thank you.
Honey, can we leave now?